Most people fail not because they weren't smart enough, not because they didn't want it, not even because life was unfair, or the system was stacked, or the odds were against them. Most people fail because they never finished becoming the person they were born to be. They stop halfway. They drown in distraction. They trade discipline for dopamine, purpose for popularity, and hunger for habits that feel good but leave them empty. They fail because they follow the crowd when the crowd is sprinting toward average, because they listen to the noise when the noise is allergic to clarity, because they live for comfort when growth only lives on the other side of pain. But the most brutal truth of all, the one most can't face, is this: most people fail because they lie to themselves. They lie when they say, "I'm doing my best," knowing they haven't even scratched their real potential. They lie when they say, "I'll start Monday," knowing full well that Monday never comes. They lie when they say, "It's just not meant to be," as if destiny is written without their signature on the contract. No. Most people fail not at the dream, but at the discipline it demands. Not because the dream is impossible, but because the mirror gets too loud. The mirror doesn't lie. It reflects your patterns. It exposes your excuses. It tells you exactly why you're stuck. And that's why people avoid it. But you're different. Because if you're still listening, if you're still here, it means you felt that tug in your chest, that roar under the noise that says, "There is more in me." And you're right. There is more in you. More strength, more clarity, more power. But power is not given. It is claimed. It is earned in the silence, forged in the friction, proven in the darkness, where no one claps and no one sees, only you, and the war between who you are and who you could be. So let's go to war. Let's talk about why most people fail and why you will not. They fail because they think mindset is a trend, not a weapon. They treat mindset like a podcast quote or a morning affirmation. But mindset isn't what you say. It's how you respond when everything falls apart, when your plan doesn't work, when the opportunity vanishes, when life throws you curveball after curveball and the only thing left is your identity. Mindset is not about being positive. It's about being unbreakable. It's not about hoping things work out. It's about becoming someone who makes sure they do. Because hope without habits is a hallucination. The world doesn't care about your good intentions. It pays you for execution. It pays you for what you finish. And most never finish because they don't believe enough. Not in the world, in themselves. Belief is the foundation of all action. You will never outwork your self-image. If you believe you're meant for mediocrity, you'll sabotage every chance at greatness. If you believe you're cursed, you'll reject every blessing. If you believe you're too late, too old, too underqualified, that belief will build a box so tight around your life, not even your dreams can breathe. So what do? You rebuild belief. You speak life over yourself, not just in words, but in evidence. You show up when it's hard. You follow through when it's not sexy. You act like you're already the person you dream of being, because action shapes identity faster than waiting ever will. You want to avoid failure? Then don't just believe. Get clear. Because most people fail not from lack of effort, but from lack of clarity. They wake up and react. They move through life like passengers on a bus someone else is driving. They confuse motion with direction. But clarity is power. When you're clear on who you are, what you want, and why it matters, you become dangerous. Not to people, to patterns, to distractions, to the lies that used to hold you back. Clarity turns your maybe into must. It turns your someday into schedule. It turns your dream into a deadline. And once you have clarity, you need vision, not just a picture of success, but a movie. Something you can feel in your bones. Most people's visions are blurry, so their action is inconsistent. But when your vision is sharp, your actions follow. And when you link that vision to purpose, to something beyond yourself, you tap into a source of strength that can't be shaken. You stop living for weekends and start living from within. That's the pivot. That's how you avoid failure. You build from the inside out. And the world, it won't understand you at first. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you're obsessed. They'll say you're too much. Let them, because while they're busy explaining their mediocrity, you'll be busy executing your mission. And that mission, it won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Because every mission worth living for is born from discomfort. Most people fail because the moment discomfort shows up, they interpret it as a sign to stop, not realizing it was the sign they were just about to start. Discomfort isn't the enemy. It's the entry fee. It's the toll you pay to pass through the gate of transformation. And if you can learn to stay, not when it feels good, but when it doesn't, you'll separate yourself from 98% of the world within months. Because most people don't quit at failure. They quit at hard, at boring, at quiet. They quit when no one claps, when the progress isn't visible, when the scale doesn't move, when the views don't come. But the elite, they keep going, they keep showing up, they keep building when the harvest is still underground. And that takes something most people never develop. Discipline. That ugly, unglamorous, misunderstood word. Most people fail because they confuse motivation with discipline. Motivation is loud. Discipline is silent. Motivation gets you started. Discipline gets you finished. Discipline is the bridge between your goals and your reality. Discipline is saying no to the ice cream, yes to the reps, no to the scroll, yes to the script, no to the crowd, yes to the craft. Discipline is the grown-up version of passion. And without it, you'll fall back into habits that betray you, into moods that mislead you, into a lifestyle that looks alive but feels dead. But when you embrace discipline, not as punishment, but as privilege, everything changes. Because discipline doesn't rob you. It rewards you. It gives you freedom. It gives you momentum. It gives you the only currency that matters, confidence. Not the kind you fake for social media, the kind you earn in private, the kind that's so real, so rooted, it walks into every room before you speak a word. And that confidence leads to action. Another reason people fail? They wait. They wait for the stars to align, for clarity, for permission, for the fear to go away, for someone else to say, it's your time. But no one is coming. Not a mentor, not a savior, not a miracle. Just you. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets to start. Because waiting creates weight. It anchors you to a life of what if. But action cuts that anchor. Action creates clarity. Action moves mountains not all at once, but one brick, one decision, one step at a time. You want to avoid failure? Move. Even when you don't feel like it. Even when you don't see results. Even when you're not sure how it's going to work. Move anyway. Because motion creates momentum. And momentum is what most people never give themselves the chance to feel. They quit too soon. They stop too early. They pull back just before the breakthrough. But you, if you just keep moving, something magical happens. You find rhythm. You find flow. You start stacking wins, and those wins stack identity. You begin to see yourself differently, not as the one who talks, as the one who executes. And that leads to the next shift. Gratitude. Most people fail because they think gratitude is a feeling. It's not. It's a discipline. It's the decision to focus on what builds, not what breaks. To honor what you do have while working for more. To see every obstacle as a teacher, not a threat. Because when you operate from gratitude, you protect your energy. You preserve your perspective. And perspective is everything. It's what separates the person who says, why me? From the person who says, try me. It's what turns pain into power, delay into direction, setbacks into setups. Gratitude isn't soft, it's steel. And it leads to resilience. The final gatekeeper. Most people fail not because they were weak, but because they didn't get back up. They let one rejection become a definition. They let one failure become a future. But those who win, they rise. They always rise. Because they understand that success isn't linear. It's laced with pain. It's wired with resistance. But every setback is a test. Will you keep going? And if the answer is yes, consistently, relentlessly, without apology, then you earn the one thing no one can ever take from you. Mastery not of the market, not of the moment, but of yourself. That's the destination. That's the promise. That's the reward. No paycheck can equal, no applause can replace. Because when you master yourself, you unlock everything else. You don't fear failure because you understand it's part of the formula. You don't fear judgment because you've already judged yourself and risen anyway. You don't fear scarcity because you've built abundance from within. Most people fail because they chase results before they've earned readiness. They want the prize, but not the process. They want the crown, but not the cross. They want to win, but they don't want to become a winner. But winning is not an event. It's an identity. It's how you think, how you speak, how you breathe under pressure, how you treat the small, silent things when nobody is watching. It's who you are when everything's on fire, and you stay calm because you've trained for this. You don't just survive storms, you expect them. You use them. You rise through them. And that kind of resilience, it's rare, it's sacred, it's built. It's not the product of inspiration, it's the outcome of intention. And that's where most people miss it. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel ready. But champions, leaders, builders, they don't wait to feel it. They move until they become it. They act until action feels natural. They fight through friction until flow finds them. They don't hope to avoid failure. They become so strong, so grounded, so certain that failure no longer defines them, it refines them. And in that furnace, something is born that no crisis can crush. Faith. Not just faith in the outcome, but faith in yourself. Faith that you'll show up again tomorrow. Faith that you'll figure it out. Faith that no matter what the world throws at you, it will not undo you because you know who you are. You know what you've built, and you know exactly why you'll never be one of the ones who fail. Not because you're better, but because you decided. You decided to do the work. You decided to hold the line. You decided to keep becoming the person your vision requires even when no one was clapping, even when the money hadn't come, even when the light hadn't shone. You became the light. That's why you'll make it. That's why you're already making it. And that's why you'll wake up one day, look in the mirror, and realize, I didn't just avoid failure. I outlived it. I outworked it. I built something it couldn't touch. And now I am something it can't break. Not perfect, not polished, but proven, because I kept showing up, and I never ever stopped. And when you never stop, when you keep showing up, not as a reaction, but as a decision, the world begins to respond differently. Opportunities don't just knock, they line up. People don't just notice, they trust you. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you became the most reliable, the most grounded, the most unshakable presence in a sea of noise and performance. And that is why you won't fail. Because you're not just chasing results anymore, you're building rhythm. You're not trying to impress, you're committing to integrity. You've stopped measuring success by what others see and started measuring it by how consistently you can live in alignment with your highest self day after day, moment after moment. This is how legacies are written. This is how names are etched into history, not by chance, but by choice. Every day you rise when it's easier to retreat. Every time you repeat the process when it's boring. Every moment you speak truth to yourself when your mind begs for lies. This is what separates the few from the many. This is what makes greatness inevitable. Not your talent, not your luck, your commitment. And here's the beautiful twist. It's available to anyone. Not reserved, not exclusive. It's just that most people never decide. Most people want to feel it first. You chose to be it first. You didn't wait to become powerful. You acted powerful, and power followed. You didn't wait to become disciplined. You chose discipline, and it changed your DNA. You didn't wait to feel confident. You showed up in courage, and confidence grew in your shadow. That's the shift. That's the edge. That's the truth. No one wants to tell you about failure. It was never a mystery. It was always a moment-to-moment decision. And you chose to win. Quietly, daily, brutally. And that's why your future is no longer a question mark. It's a statement, a declaration, a monument to what happens when a person draws the line, burns the script, rewrites the narrative, and walks it out. So now, keep walking, keep climbing, keep deciding, because your consistency has already paid for what your future is about to deliver. You're not like most people. You didn't avoid failure because you feared it. You avoided failure because you outgrew it, because you answered the call. And you became the one who would not be denied. Because when you become the one who will not be denied, the world shifts to meet you. Not instantly, not with fireworks, but inevitably, because energy like yours, forged in discipline, refined in clarity, driven by purpose, becomes magnetic, unshakable, inevitable. You don't need to force your success. You attract it by who you've become. You don't need to fight for recognition. Your results speak in a voice so deep, so undeniable, the room listens when you walk in. That's the reward for not quitting. That's the return on every quiet moment when you felt invisible, uncertain, behind but chose to build anyway. You became a monument to possibility, a lighthouse for those still lost in delay. Proof that the process works if you do. And now, your name doesn't just carry weight, it carries meaning. It carries legacy. It carries the story of someone who refused to be common in a world that settles for average. You rewrote the rules. You created your own luck. You made peace with pain and turned it into your partner. You forged an identity so solid, nothing shallow could tempt you. That's why you'll never go back. Not because you're done growing, but because you finally know who you are. You don't get shaken by setbacks anymore. You don't get fooled by shortcuts. You don't get seduced by comfort, because you've seen what happens when you honor the work and it honors you back. So stand tall, not with arrogance, but with earned authority. Not with noise, but with presence. Because you've arrived at the place most never reach, not because it was easy, but because you stayed. You endured. You believed when it made no sense. And now you are the exception. Not the one who tried, the one who transformed, not the one who started, the one who finished, the one who stood where most people failed and became the reason they still can succeed. Now walk with fire, with clarity, with the calm certainty of someone who doesn't hope to win but knows they've already won, because you didn't fear failure. You outlived it. And now you lead not by title, not by demand, but by example, by how you show up when no one is cheering, by how you stay consistent when no one is watching, by how you hold the line when pressure screams at you to fold. Because leadership isn't granted. It's earned in silence, in sacrifice, in standards so high that even your lowest days still outshine most people's best. You didn't become this through shortcuts. You became this through submission, not to the world, but to your higher self. You submitted to the work, to the early mornings, to the reps no one saw, to the habits that felt thankless, until the results roared loud enough to silence every doubt. And now, every room you enter feels it. The discipline, the fire, the stillness. You don't need to explain it. Your life explains itself. And in that power, you no longer chase. You choose. You choose what aligns. You choose who you become. You choose the life you live because you've earned that choice. That's the gift of mastering yourself, of rejecting the failure most people settle for, of rising every time you had a reason to stay down. Now you walk differently, not with ego, but with evidence. Now you move differently, not faster, but deeper. Now you live differently, not for status, but for significance. Because you've realized that the real win isn't what you achieve, it's what you survive. It's what you build. It's who you become in the battle. And you became undeniable. You became unfakeable. You became unforgettable. Because you didn't just avoid failure. You stared it down. You walked through it. And you rose so high, the only thing left to carry is others. So carry them, lead them, show them not with words, but with the quiet, thunderous truth of a life that was once ordinary, but chose not to stay there. And because you did, now they can too. And that is legacy. Not the kind you carve into stone, but the kind you etch into souls. The kind that outlives your name. The kind that echoes through lives you'll never meet, in places you'll never see, because your discipline, your example, your unrelenting refusal to fail has become a signal to the world that greatness is not a gift, it's a decision. That success is not reserved for the chosen few. It's available to the decided few. That the line between mediocrity and mastery is not drawn in talent, but in tenacity. And you cross that line not once, but every day. Every time you showed up when it was inconvenient. Every time you stayed focused when everyone else drifted. Every time you pushed through when average whispered, just this once. Quit. You didn't. You refused. And because of that, you are free. Free from the cycles that trap most people forever. Free from the stories that kept generations small. Free from the patterns that promised ease but delivered emptiness. You traded comfort for purpose. You traded noise for meaning. And now, your life has become something most only dream of. Proof. Proof that you don't need perfect timing. Proof that you don't need flawless beginnings. Proof that you don't need anyone's permission. Just a standard. Just a decision. Just the will to keep becoming until the version of you that once feared failure can no longer even recognize it. Because failure no longer follows you. It fears you. You've earned every inch of this ground. You've become the person most people talk about, but never commit to becoming. So now, as the sun rises on this next season, don't slow down. Double down. Because your life is the torch. And someone out there still lost in delay, still drowning in doubt, is about to see your light. And when they do, they'll rise too. Because you didn't just avoid failure. You ended it. Not just for you, but for everyone who comes after you. And that is the ultimate calling. Not just to succeed, but to awaken. To walk so boldly in your truth that it disrupts every excuse around you. To stand so solid in your purpose that others can feel it radiate through your presence, your pace, your posture. This is more than personal victory now. This is transformation turned contagious. Because when people see what you've done, what you've become, they stop asking if it's possible. They start asking how. And that's when the real ripple begins. Because your life no longer just inspires, it instructs. It teaches by demonstration. It leads by consistency. It proves that while most people fail, the ones who don't, the rare, relentless few, all share one thing in common. They made the decision to never again become their old self. They didn't just fix habits, they forged identity. And once your identity is forged in fire, the old life can't hold you. The fear can't move you. The noise can't reach you. You've built a frequency so elevated that failure can't find you anymore. Not because you avoid challenge, but because you meet it differently. You meet it as a builder, as a breaker of chains, as the example your younger self prayed existed. So hold this ground, own this space. You earned it with blood, with grit, with truth. Let your walk remain unwavering. Let your standard remain untouchable. Let your mission remain clear. Not just to live, but to lead. Not just to win, but to wake the world by who you are and how you rise. This right here is the moment you go from survivor to symbol. Not because you asked to be, but because you became it. And now, everything you do carries weight. Every decision you make is history in motion. Every breath you take echoes possibility. So breathe deeply, walk boldly, and when you're asked, why didn't you fail like the rest? Smile and say, because I chose not to. And I never look back. Because once you stop looking back, the only thing left is forward. Forward into responsibility. Forward into leadership. Forward into a life designed, not defaulted. And the path ahead, it won't be flat. It won't be simple, but it will be yours. Uncompromised, unborrowed, unapologetic. That is what most people never understand. They think failure is a moment. They think it's an event, a business that didn't work, a dream that didn't take off, a plan that collapsed. But failure isn't an event. It's a settling, a quiet agreement with a lesser version of yourself. It's when you stop sharpening your vision, stop honoring your routines, stop showing up like your future depends on it, because it does. But you didn't make that agreement. You burned the contract. You chose the path of daily effort, of uncommon discipline, of radical ownership. And now you are proof that success isn't for the lucky. It's for the loyal, loyal to the process, loyal to the promise, loyal to the person you committed to becoming, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Because that's where strength is forged, in the furnace of hard choices, lonely nights, unseen hours. And now you carry that strength everywhere you go, in how you move, in what you tolerate, in what you demand of yourself when no one's watching. You've become sovereign. You don't need external permission. You don't need a guarantee of the outcome. You are the outcome. And you know with every fiber of your being that the greatest risk isn't chasing your dream. It's abandoning it. Settling is the most expensive thing you'll ever do. You gave up your comfort, but you kept your fire. And in doing so, you've become unstoppable. Now, the only thing left is legacy. So leave it loud. Leave it proud. Leave it in every action, every move, every room you enter. Not with noise, but with presence. Because you didn't just avoid failure. You transformed it. You turned it into the fuel. You made it your past, so your purpose could become the future. And now that future is calling, louder than ever. So answer it. Stand tall. Move forward. And never, ever stop becoming the reason why others believe they can win too. Because you did. And now, it's their turn to rise.